ladies and gentlemen, we'll go ahead and start our presentation for the evening. I'm sure a few more people might filter in, but we'll go ahead and get started since it is 5 o'clock. I just want to welcome everybody to the Rules of Golf seminar. I want to thank you for taking time out to learn more about the rules of golf. My name is Jeremy Fryman. I'm Senior Director of Golf Development here at the GSGA and look forward to spending the next little bit with you teaching about the rules of golf. I also want to introduce our manager of junior golf, Kevin Duffy, who will be joining me for the presentation and talking about various topics throughout as well. So happy to have Kevin on also. Just a couple housekeeping items before we get started. This presentation is designed to give you an overview of the rules of golf, some basic things that you'll encounter during junior golf, high school golf, recreational golf. It is not meant to be an all-inclusive dive into the rules of golf. The USGA and PGA of America do a rules workshop series every year. That's about a 3.5-day seminar on everything rules of golf. So this is meant to be a good overview in the next 90 minutes or so. And hopefully you're able to learn a few things along the way. As far as questions go, we will have slides throughout the presentation with question marks. Please save your questions for those slides, and I would ask that you just type them into the chat feature here on Zoom, and we will get those answered. If for some reason we don't answer your question right away, we will get it answered later in the presentation, or we may defer it to another section of the presentation based upon what the question was. So we've got a bunch of videos throughout the presentation as well to hopefully keep it moving and keep it interesting for you. Without further ado, we'll kind of jump in here. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. So just bear with me 1 second. Okay, so everybody should be able to see the 2023 Rules of Golf structure and overview slide. And before we dive in, I'll just preface this by saying you may or may not be aware that the Rules of Golf underwent some minor changes heading into this year. It was a rules change year. But if you think back to 4 years ago, for those of you who were playing golf at that time, the rules of golf underwent a major change, and that's typically done every 30 or so years, at least it has been to this point. The 2023 changes were just cleaning up a lot of items that they had overlooked or that came about after the 2019 rules change. And we'll cover some of those items here this evening. But by and large, a lot of the changes coming into this year are not large changes and not something or not items that you would see on a regular basis out on the golf course. So we will go ahead and dive in here. So first of all, what makes the rules of golf so complicated? And the reason for that is all the pictures you see here. Playing the game itself is complicated. If you think about any other sport, such as basketball, baseball, football, tennis, those are all played on a court or field or arena that has pretty finite parameters and boundaries. And so only so many things can happen in that confined space during a competition. When you think about golf, it's spread out over a large area of land. There's water to navigate a lot of times. There's bunkers. We need to have rules in place for when our ball is no longer playable, such as if it's at the bottom of that pond in the middle there. And so that's why the rules of golf are so complicated, just because playing the game itself is complicated. But when you read the rule book, these two great principles are inherent throughout the rules. And those principles are: you need to play the course as you find it, and you need to play the ball as it lies. So you can see these great pictures here. There's nothing that says you need to have a good lie in the fairway, and there's nothing that says you need to have a bad lie when you hit it in the rough. You can see these photos are contrary to that belief, and these things can happen in the rules of golf. Bobby Jones said, golf is the closest game to the game we call life. You get bad breaks from good shots, you get good breaks from bad shots, but you have to play the ball where it lies. So that's part of what makes the game of golf so great. Another part that makes the game so great is the notion that the game of golf is played with honor and integrity. And if you think about some other sports, again, take baseball, for example, getting away with a violation of the rules might be part of the game or even the strategy for teams. If you think about a player who pretends they got hit with a pitch in order to be awarded first base, a lot of that has changed since instant replay has been instituted. But prior to that, that may be part of the strategy, is to kind of act like you got hit in order to get a base. Golf is not that way. It's written, the rules are written in that you're going to monitor your own play and call penalties on yourself should they occur. Here's a great example in our first video of a player doing just that.
The ball moved.
Oh.
What happened there? It appeared the ball moved.
Let's see if we can see anything here. I couldn't tell from that angle.
Okay, so this is Davis Riley at 10 years ago, almost, at the U.S. Junior Amateur, so the largest event in junior golf in the nation, the biggest stage. He's in the final match, which is a 36-hole match, and he's on the 34th hole. He's 2 down, so he needs to win this hole to continue the match. He's standing over his ball, and his ball moves. He is the only one on property who saw that. None of the rules officials did. Obviously, the commentators did not. And Davis called that penalty on himself, which was a 1-stroke penalty, and essentially took him out of the hole and lost the match right there, essentially, by calling a penalty on himself. So this is the notion that we're talking about and what's expected of a golfer when they're playing the game of golf. The rules are written presuming players will play by them and not attempt to get away with infractions. When the rules of golf were heavily rewritten in 2019, they talked more than ever about prompt pace of play and its importance. And let's watch this video.
It is important that you are aware of how your pace of play impacts others. The 2019 rules encourage prompt pace of play by all players by recommending that you play promptly throughout the round, such as by preparing in advance for each stroke, moving at a good pace between strokes and between holes, and that you make a stroke in no more than 40 seconds.
Okay, so playing promptly is important, and they even went so far as to say how long it should take you to complete a shot when it's your turn and there are no distractions, and that number is 40 seconds. So as we're getting going with the golf season here, we just had the Masters, and golf is well underway here in 2023. I would urge you to head out during your practice and time your pre-shot routine, selecting your club, getting your yardage. All of that's included in your 40 seconds, and you need to be able to hit the ball in that time frame. So keep that in mind. Also keep in mind when you're playing in events there likely are going to be some sort of pace of play guidelines in effect, such as we have our pace of play policy on the GSGA Junior Tour. So just be mindful of those as you're competing in events, and that way you're playing within any pace guidelines that are in effect. The other thing that the rules of golf talk about now is this concept of playing ready golf, and this is something we encourage junior golfers to do at all times. And let's watch the video for an explanation on what ready golf is.
The order of play when starting a hole depends on who has the honor. After that, it is based on which ball is farthest from the hole. In stroke play, however, there is no penalty for playing out of turn, and the 2019 rules both allow and encourage you to play ready golf, which means to play in a safe and responsible order that is most convenient and that saves time. These players agreed to play out of turn because the player farther from the hole had a difficult shot, and the other player was ready to play. Okay, so that's a great representation of playing ready golf. This young lady has a more difficult shot and needed a little bit more time to assess. And instead of the two young men just sitting there watching her do all that, they were fine and ready to play, and they went ahead and did that. And it's important that we communicate with each other in our group as to when this is going to happen, because we want to make sure we're doing this in a non-distracting or potentially harmful way when we're playing out there on the golf course. But this is certainly encouraged and will help your group keep up with the group ahead of you. Any questions on this first section here? Again, let's type any questions into our chat feature, and we will get those answered at these questions slides. Okay, so we're going to move on to just a couple of equipment type items that are important for you to know. This first one is the limit of 14 clubs. So you may or may not know that you may not start a round with more than 14 clubs in your bag, or have more than 14 clubs during the round. So you can start with a lesser number, say 13, and you could add a club at the turn, but you can't ever add or start with more than 14. And then distance measuring devices are permitted by the rules of golf as of 2019. And so they are allowed in any competition. In order for them to not be allowed, that competition has to have a local rule in place prohibiting them. So all of our GSGA Junior Tour events and GSGA events, they are permitted per the rules. When you are using a distance measuring device, we need to make sure it's measuring distance information only. It may not measure elevation changes or slope, wind, any of those items. And in addition, it may not be interpreting distance or telling you, it's 150 yards, you need to be hitting an 8-iron. Cannot select the club for you. A lot of the rangefinders have these capabilities today, but usually a function or an option to turn off that function during competitive play, which is what you want to do when you're playing in competition. Any questions on those couple equipment items? Okay, we're going to kick it over to Kevin for the first time, and he's going to talk about the areas of the golf course.
Thank you very much. As Jeremy mentioned at the beginning of this presentation, golf is just slightly different than other sports in our field of play, where tennis and football have finite dimensions to their court or field. Where golf doesn't, and every golf course is different. The obstacles that you face are different. So how do we as golf administrators, and how do you as players know where you are on the golf course and what options you have for you in those situations? And we've come up with 5 different areas of the golf course to help us in determining this and help determine any rulings that arise. And these 5 areas, 4 of them are specific, and the 5th one, or the first one, however you want to look at it, is overall pretty general, which is why we call it the general area. And this covers the entire golf course except the 4 specific areas that I will get into here in a second. So I'll come back to the general area at the end of this section to recap it. But turning it over, or starting off with our first of these specific areas is the teeing area. It's where you are going to be starting the hole. This area is specific to the hole that you're playing and the tee that you're playing. So if I'm teeing off on the first hole from the blue tee markers here in this picture, and I hit it over on the right side of this hole over by the second tee, and it's also in the by the blue tees there, that's not the teeing area. What you're seeing in this picture is the only teeing area in this situation. And it's defined by these 2 tee markers, the very front and outside edges of them. And you have the entire area of 2 club links back from that front edge. And so you can tee it up anywhere in that area as described in that picture. Moving on to our second of the specific areas are bunkers. Now, this is just slightly different from the teeing area, where it's not specific to the hole that you're playing, just the conditions of these bunkers. And so it includes all of the bunkers on the golf course. Doesn't matter what hole you're on. The third of these specific areas are what we call penalty areas. And similar to bunkers, this includes all of the penalty areas on the golf course, not specific to the hole that you're playing. And the last of our specific areas are what we call the putting green. And this does go back to the teeing area, where it is specific to the hole that you're playing. If I am playing the first hole and I hit my shot way far right over onto the 5th green, where that may be a putting green for number 5, it is not the putting green when I'm playing the first hole. And we have a rule that helps us get off of that putting green for free relief. That's mandatory. But in that situation, only the first green is the putting green when we're talking about areas of the golf course. And so to recap it all, the general area is anywhere on the golf course that it does not fit into those 4 specific areas. So if I'm in the fairway, I'm in the rough, in the pine straw, or just some natural, bare areas that's not marked penalty area, then I am in the general area, and any rule that's specific to that is, how I'll proceed under the rules of golf. Are there any questions about areas of the golf course before we move on and dive deeper into these areas? Wonderful. If not, I will turn it back over to Jeremy to talk about bunkers.
Great. Thanks, Kevin. Kevin covered the areas of the golf course for us. So we're going to dive into those areas a little bit closer. And each of these sections will be preceded by a video. So our first area we're going to chat about further are bunkers.
Time at the beach can be enjoyable, but on the golf course, most players prefer to avoid the sand. Bunkers are prepared areas of sand with a few special restrictions that serve to maintain the challenge of playing from them. When you find your ball in a bunker, you're not allowed to deliberately touch the sand to test its condition. Also, be careful not to touch the sand behind or in front of your ball, or during a practice swing, even if by accident. The good news is you can move loose impediments and movable obstructions, and even touch the sand with your club elsewhere in the bunker, as long as you're not testing its condition.
Okay, so that video was a great overview of bunkers, and this is going to be a consistent thing we talk about with each of these areas of the course. But how do we know when our ball is in a bunker? Well, the answer to that is when any part of the ball touches sand that is on the ground inside the edge of the bunker. So we can clearly see the ball in this picture is on sand that is in the ground, or that is on the ground inside the edge of the bunker. If we move just a little bit over to the right in that kind of green patch of grass, if it were on that grass, it would not be in the bunker because, again, it's not meeting that criteria. So that's the key, is that it touches sand on the ground inside the edge. And like the video talked about, when our ball is in the bunker, we have the ability to remove loose impediments and movable obstructions. And if we happen to touch some of the sand in doing that a reasonable amount, then there is no penalty for that, and that is just fine. When does touching the sand result in a penalty? So before a stroke at a ball in a bunker, a player must not deliberately touch sand in the bunker with their hand, with their club, with a rake, with any object in order to test the condition. So the firmness or the softness of that sand, that's information that we cannot seek to gain before playing a stroke. I cannot touch sand in the bunker with a club in the area right in front of or right behind my ball. So essentially I cannot ground my club in the bunker. I cannot ground my club when making a practice swing in the bunker, so make sure we don't hit the sand in that instance. Or in making the backswing for a stroke. And here's another little video here.
Some bunker restrictions continue to exist. For example, you are still not allowed to touch the sand with your club, behind or in front of your ball, when making a practice swing, or when making your backswing.
Okay, so there's a good recap of those items. Again, make sure we're not touching it during our backswing either. Any questions on bunkers? Okay.
Wonderful. We'll get started with a video on penalty areas.
Penalty areas include any body of water on the golf course plus any other area marked by red or yellow stakes or lines. If you happen to find your ball in a penalty area, you can always play it as it lies. Before playing a stroke, it's okay to ground your club, take practice swings that touch the ground, and move loose impediments. If you choose to take relief, the color of the stakes will indicate how many options are available, but all come with one penalty stroke. The first option is stroke and distance, which means you can go back to the spot where you last played. The second is to imagine a straight line from the hole through the point where your ball last crossed the edge of the penalty area and drop on that line behind it. Your ball can roll up to one club length in any direction from where it first struck the course, including forward. You have a third relief option available only if your ball winds up in a red penalty area, which allows you to drop within 2 club lengths of where your ball last crossed into that penalty area, no closer to the hole. There may also be an area marked as a dropping zone that could be available as an additional option.
So that is a fantastic video recapping penalty areas. I will do my best to recap what was said in the video and hopefully provide just as much clarity in my explanations as well. So just like bunkers, we need to know when we are in a penalty area, and that's when any part of the ball lies on or touches the ground or anything else, whether it be natural or an artificial object inside the edge of the penalty area. And as the video explained, there are two different types of penalty areas. There are some that are marked red. There are some that are marked yellow, and this determines your relief options, and we'll get to that in just a second. But if you are in the penalty area, again, you may play it as it lies. You have that option, and you can remove loose impediments. You can take practice swings. You can ground your club, all of that stuff. Those same rules of the general area apply here. If you wish not to play from the penalty area, or you're unable to, if it's in some water, you have options to take relief for one penalty stroke outside of that penalty area. Like I said, if you're not able to play the shot, that's same goes for if you're not able to identify your golf ball, but it is known or virtually certain that it is in the penalty area, these options still apply to you. So if it's going to a body of water and you see it splash, or it's going to heavily dense grass or tall trees that are marked red or yellow, and it is known to be in there, you have these options, and we'll run through them here. Again, these relief options for you, it does come with a one-stroke penalty. The number 1 and the number 2 options apply for both red and yellow penalty areas. The third option only applies for a red penalty area, so it's important to know which one you are in. Getting into the first of these options, I like to call these the ABCs of relief. And so the first one here is A, and I call it again. And that's going back to where you previously made the stroke. It's called stroke and distance. And you can drop a ball within 1 club length of that area from where you last hit your shot. And just to recap, it is available whether it's in red or yellow penalty area. Moving on to our B option, this is what I call back on the line. And as the video explained, and we have another one here, you imagine a line from where your ball entered in the flagstick, and you go back as far as you would like to choose on that line. And so we'll get to this video here.
The rules of golf are changing in 2023. The back on the line relief procedure has been simplified, and here's what it looks like. So to use a penalty area as an example, I'm going to keep the point where the ball last crossed between the hole and where I want to drop it. I can go back as far as I want on the line, but I have to drop it on the line because that's what activates this relief option. If I don't drop it on the line, I'll be dropping in a wrong way. The relief area won't get created, and I'll have to correct my mistake by dropping it again, but in the right way on the line. But once dropped on the line, the ball can roll up to 1 club length in any direction, even if it rolls forward and closer to the hole. Back on the line is a great relief option for penalty areas, but you can also use it when you decide that your ball is unplayable.
We'll get into dropping procedures, what a relief area is, what a reference point is in just a little while. But this is the only situation, this and unplayable ball, where when dropping, if the ball rolls forward but stays within a club length of the area, that's okay, and we proceed under that. So you have that full circle of a relief area as shown in the image there. And again, that is available for red and yellow penalty areas. Our last option, it's the C option, and it's club length. This is, again, only available for a red penalty area. And this and unplayable ball are the only situations where you would be measuring 2 club lengths instead of 1. And we have another video here.
In the 2019 rules, when you take lateral relief from a red penalty area under a 1-stroke penalty, estimate the point on the edge of the penalty area where your ball last crossed as it went in. Starting at that point, measure or estimate your 2 club lengths relief area outside the penalty area that is not nearer the hole. In the 2019 rules, club lengths are the length of the longest club in your bag, except your putter, and then drop a ball in that area. Your drop ball must land in and come to rest in the relief area.
Wonderful. And again, when it comes to 1 club length and 2 club lengths, you don't always have to measure right up to the 1 or 2 club length edge. You have that entire shaded area no closer to the hole in this situation to drop in. So you can find a good piece of turf to drop it on. But that is our C club length option for penalty areas. Are there any questions on that or any other component to what a penalty area is? Fantastic. All right, Jeremy, you want to take over putting greens?
Yes, so the last area that we'll cover here from our areas of the golf course will be putting green.
The rules allow many special permissions on the putting green that you don't get anywhere else on the course. And while you can't repair aeration holes, natural surface imperfections, or any normal wear on the green, there is plenty you can do. Marking, lifting, and cleaning your ball is always permitted. It's okay to repair most damage such as ball marks, spike marks, hole plugs, and anything caused by shoes and animals. Sand and loose soil can be removed even when it's on your line of play. All those fixes must be done promptly and must not improve your line of play beyond the repair. Finally, you or your caddy are allowed to touch the green when pointing where you expect to putt.
Okay, so putting greens are specially prepared areas on the golf course. And how do we know when we're on the putting green? Well, it's when any part of the ball touches the putting green. So you can see here in the picture, this ball is touching both the putting green and the fringe surrounding the putting green, which would be the general area. But in this instance, since a part of it is touching the putting green, the ball would be on the putting green, and that allows you to do certain things as the video indicated. One of those things is when we're on the putting green, we can mark the ball and we can lift it and clean it. However, before we do lift it and clean it, the spot of the ball must be marked. And when I replace the ball, I must replace it in the exact same spot I picked it up from. So that means if I put my ball marker behind the ball, then I need to return my ball directly in front of my ball marker from the exact spot I picked it up from. It does not mean I get to put my ball anywhere around the ball marker I would like. So other items I may do would be removing sand and loose soil on the putting green and repairing any damage on the putting green. So sand and loose soil, definitely be careful with that. You cannot remove those items anywhere but the putting green. So be sure you're not doing that in the fairway or otherwise. And this repair of damage is any damage that is not, normal to the putting green. So if a deer runs across it and leaves hoof prints, you are allowed to fix that, for example. The other great thing about the putting green is there is no penalty for accidentally causing our ball to move.
Under the 2019 rules, if you accidentally move your ball or ball marker on the putting green, there is no penalty. For example, if you accidentally move your ball in making a practice swing or in preparing for your stroke, drop your ball marker on your ball and move it. Move your ball with your foot. Or cause your ball marker to move. There is no penalty, and you simply replace your ball or ball marker on its original spot.
Good, so we're not penalized for being clumsy on the putting green. This is another great example of something that's particular to the putting green. When I have marked my ball, lifted it, and replaced it, I have essentially solidified that spot for my ball. So if the ball moves after that point for any reason, I'm going to replace the ball. And the video here will show us that.
After you mark, lift, and then replace your ball on the putting green, if it moves for any reason, including for your own accidental actions or for some other reason such as wind. Always replace your ball back on its original spot. If you don't know the exact spot, estimate it as accurately as you can and replace the ball there.
Good. So once again, this is when we have marked the ball, lifted it, and replaced it. Let's say we're walking up to the putting green after making a stroke, and the wind blows the ball into the hole as we're walking up. Well, that ball would be considered to be holed out with the last stroke that we made. So in that instance, we hadn't touched the ball yet. We hadn't marked it and lifted it. It was still in play, and it moved due to unforeseen circumstances. So at that point, the ball is played from its new position. And so this is an example of a ball doing just that, kind of moving, half a rotation. And from there, we would play that ball from its new spot since we had not marked it and lifted it yet. Any questions on putting greens?
Okay, moving on from the areas of the golf course, we've talked a lot about dropping, especially when it came to the penalty area relief a little while back. And so there is a right way and a wrong way to drop a golf ball and to put it back in play. The right way, it must be done by the player, not his or her caddy or a spectator, but by the player, straight down from knee height. And you can't influence the ball in any way by throwing it, spinning it, or otherwise. And it must not hit the player or the player's equipment before landing in the relief area. If it does, then we just need to correct that and do it the right way. But also that the ball must land in the relief area and come to rest in that relief area. And so you've heard me say relief area quite a bit in this presentation and reference point as well. And you may be thinking, what are those phrases? And so a relief area and a reference point are what we discuss when it comes to our dropping procedure. And the reference point is the point where we begin measuring this relief area. And it's different in different situations. The relief area is that entire area that we are allowed to drop the ball in and play from. So in this image here, that entire shaded area for an abnormal course condition. The reference point is going to be nearest point, no closer to the hole, free of that abnormal course condition. And then that player measured one club length anywhere, no closer to the hole, and that's where they drop. Now, this relief area is always going to be measured by one club length with two exceptions. One was already mentioned in the penalty area when we have the C option there of our club length. The other is the C option for unplayable ball, where we can also take two club lengths to get out of an unplayable ball situation. In both cases, it must not be near to the hole in the reference point, and then we just drop and move on. I believe this may be oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, with back on the line, like I mentioned, this situation is the only situation where this ball may be moved or roll up to a club length closer to the hole. And that's where the player determines that spot on back on the line. And if it rolls anywhere within that one club length full circle in any direction, then that is also the relief area. Now, not always will the ball come to rest in this relief area. Like I said, it needs to be played from there. And so when that occurs, we have procedures in place where we drop it again for a second time. And if it rolls out, then we place it from where that second drop first hit the ground. And here's a video about that.
In the 2019 rules, when dropping and taking free relief or penalty relief, your ball must be dropped in the defined relief area, and it must come to rest in there too. Most of the time, with the knee-height dropping procedure, that will happen on your first drop. When it doesn't, drop a second time. If that drop doesn't stay within the relief area either, place a ball where your second drop first touched the ground.
All right, so there you go. Yeah, if it rolls out a second time when we dropped it correctly, we just place it from where the second drop first hit and play on. Now, like I said, there are wrong ways to drop a ball, and these do not count to the situation that we just discussed about drop, and place. That only occurs if you dropped it twice correctly and it rolls out. So if you drop it in a wrong way and then you continue dropping it in a wrong way, you have to correct that by dropping it in the right way. And so by doing this, it's anywhere not knee height, or if it hits the player or the player's equipment before hitting the ground. If it does it by accident after hitting the ground, that's okay. But if it hits you or your equipment first, we need to correct that by dropping it correctly. Also, if it does not hit the relief area first, even if it rolls in like the picture says, this is an incorrect procedure. We do need to correct that by dropping it where it would land in the relief area first. Now, in some situations, you're not able to drop your original ball, like if it's lost or in a penalty area and you can't get it. But to make things easy with the rules of golf, anytime that you are dropping a ball, you may use the original, or you can also substitute another ball in this situation. And that's whether or not it's free relief or penalty area relief. You're allowed to do this, and here's a video on that as well.
When the 2019 rules let you lift your ball to take relief instead of playing it as it lies, you will be allowed to either use your original ball or substitute and use a different ball. In the 2019 rules, you are allowed to substitute a ball when taking free relief, as well as when taking penalty relief. This player is substituting a ball when taking free relief from a cart path.
Right, there you go. That ball may have been scuffed and she may not have wanted to play that one. She's taking free relief from an abnormal course condition. That's a cart path and immovable obstruction, which we'll get to. And so she has the option to use another ball, in which she did. Are there any questions on dropping procedures, anything regarding that? Great. Moving on to loose impediments and movable obstructions.
Yeah, so we're going to now look at some different things that we may encounter during our round of golf. And the first item that's fairly common would be loose impediment.
A fundamental principle in golf is play the course as you find it, but it's not always that simple. Leaves, branches, grass clippings, and other natural objects sometimes get in the way. These are known as loose impediments. These attached natural objects can make things more difficult than necessary. Fortunately, you are allowed to move loose impediments without penalty, even in bunkers and penalty areas. But there is an element of risk involved. If moving loose impediments causes your ball to move, you must replace it and add one penalty stroke. unless it happens on the putting green, where there is no penalty.
Good. So loose impediments certainly are likely encountered almost every round of golf. And that these are natural objects that we're allowed to remove without penalty anywhere on or off the course, and I can do so in any way. So let's say we're playing in the fall and we've got a bunch of leaves on the putting greens. I can take my towel and sweep those away rather than having to pick them up individually to move them. Now we have to be careful because if I'm anywhere but on the putting green and I cause my ball to move when I'm removing a loose impediment, that's going to be a penalty situation. And I'll need to replace my ball to where it moved from. And so we want to definitely be careful with that. As we talked about, if that happens on the putting green or in the teeing area for that matter, we can just move the ball back to where it was without penalty. So loose impediments are natural objects. We're going to move on to movable obstructions, which are artificial objects.
The two fundamental principles in golf are play the ball as it lies and play the course as you find it. But sometimes you just can't do that when artificial obstacles such as rakes, water bottles, player equipment, waste baskets, or other objects get in your way. They are known as movable obstructions. These obstacles can be moved out of your way anywhere, even in bunkers and penalty areas. While not required, it's a good idea to mark your ball before moving an obstruction. If the ball moves, there is no penalty. Just simply replace it and play on.
Okay, so movable obstructions, the difference here is these are artificial objects that are not natural to, they may be common on the golf course, but they're not natural to the environment of the golf course. And that's why they have kind of a little bit of a different status, though they can be readily moved anywhere on or off the course. And you may do so in any way. So if Kevin and I are playing a round of golf and we need to move a bench that's in my way, we can do that together as long as it can be removed easily. If I happen to move my ball when I'm moving a movable obstruction, there is no penalty for this situation, and the ball must be replaced on its original spot. So a lot of times your ball could be up against a rake near a bunker. It's a great idea to mark that spot. You don't have to, just so you make sure you get your ball back in the correct spot if it moves when you remove the rake. Any questions on loose impediments or movable obstructions?
Okay, abnormal course conditions.
The two fundamental principles of golf are play the ball as it lies and play the course as you find it. But there are 4 conditions that are not considered part of the challenge when playing the game. These are collectively referred to as abnormal course conditions, and you aren't required to play from them. These include temporary water, animal holes, immovable obstructions, and ground under repair. Golf courses decide when an area is abnormal, and it generally needs to be marked. Also, there are certain conditions which are ground under repair by default, such as holes made by maintenance staff and any material like grass clippings or brush piled for removal. If you want to play your ball as it lies from any of these abnormal course conditions, go ahead, but you are allowed to take relief without penalty, and here's how. First, you need to determine the nearest point of complete relief, no closer to the hole where the abnormal course condition no longer interferes with your lie, stance, or swing. It's helpful to mark that spot with a T. Then determine the area within 1 club length, again, no closer to the hole. Drop your ball and play on. To learn more about the nearest point of complete relief, check out that video in this series.
Okay, so like the video said, abnormal course conditions cover kind of a wide range of different situations, whether that be an animal hole, ground under repair, immovable obstructions like a cart path or an irrigation box, or temporary water that's really not supposed to be there, but is, if it had a lot of rain leading into it. All of these collectively, like they all have each has a separate definition, but collectively they make up an abnormal course condition. And the relief procedure for all of these situations is the same. So when you have interference from these situations, interference exists when only one of these occurs, but there are three different types of interference. And one of those is if your ball is lying in or on an abnormal course condition, like a cart path, if it's lying on the cart path. Another way that you may have interference is if it's affecting your stance. As you see here in the top picture, the player standing on the cart path, or if it interferes with the player's swing, like this irrigation box. A couple of things to note here at the bottom, it's your intended stance and your intended swing. So you can't over exaggerate standing on a cart path or over exaggerate your swing to get relief. It's if you're fairly intending to swing and it's reasonable to believe that you're going to be affected by these areas. A good example of this is if for this example, an irrigation sprinkler head is in between the player's stance and the lie of the ball. It's not affecting any of the three interference situations. It may be a distraction visually, but it doesn't interfere in any way with her swing. And so this player does not get relief. Now, you are entitled to free relief if your ball is in the general area and you have one of those interference situations, but in taking free relief, it's your nearest point no closer to the hole, but you must be free of all three. So it only takes one to get free relief, but you must be free of all three when you drop. And here's a video as well.
The first step in taking relief from conditions such as ground under repair, temporary water, or immovable obstructions is to find the nearest point of complete relief, no closer to the hole. This location is the spot either left of, right of, or behind your ball where the condition you are taking relief from no longer interferes with your stance or swing. You determine this spot by simulating the stance, swing, and direction of play you would use to play your ball if the condition didn't exist. The nearest point can change based on a variety of things, including whether you're right or left-handed, your height, or your choice of club. In this case, the player's nearest point of complete relief from the cart path is not to the left in the clear, but rather under the tree. It's good practice to figure out your options before lifting your ball, because sometimes playing it as it lies might be the best choice.
A great piece in that video is right at the end, and something that we recommend to all of the players whenever we come across these situations is to leave that ball where it is. Let us, determine where your nearest point of complete relief is before lifting that ball, because you may very well have a better chance of hitting it from there, as if it's on the cart path, than dropping in a bush. It's not your choice where the relief area is. It's always your nearest point of complete relief. and it's not always favorable. So a great practice is to leave it there, determine it, and then you can make a decision if you want to take free relief or not, or if you just want to proceed on and play from there. But if you do choose to take free relief, like the video said, it's nearest point of complete relief from all three interference situations. This must be in the general area, no closer to the hole than your reference point, as we stated earlier. And then you drop in that relief area and proceed on. Moving on to an embedded ball, which happens from time to time, especially in the springtime, as we've had this year, just a little bit kind of a wet spring. And so embedded ball happens, and we have ways in giving relief. So anywhere in the general area, you have free relief for an embedded ball. If you're on the putting green and it's embedded in the putting green, you just simply would mark and lift your ball. You can repair the pitch mark, and then you place it down in our next image there. So that player would just mark his spot, and then they would just lift and repair the pitch mark and then place it back down. Like I said, free relief is in the general area. So if you are in a bunker or in a penalty area, you do not get free relief. You must play it as it lies, or if you're in a bunker, you may take an unplayable, which we'll get to. If you're in a penalty area, you can take penalty area relief. Now, in doing so, again, an embedded ball is if it is below the surface of the ground. And so you can mark and lift the ball to see if it is embedded. As you can see in the image here, that ball is clearly underneath the surface of the ground. And it would have an indentation once the player lifts it. And so if that's the case, your reference point is going to be in the general area right behind the golf ball. And then you would measure one club length left, right, or behind, just like that semicircle shows. And then you would drop and play on from there. And just as another reminder, this is a 1 club length relief area. As all drops are, except for the lateral relief for penalty area and unplayable, where those are 2. This is a 1 club length relief area. Are there any questions with abnormal course conditions, embedded ball, before we move on to if it's lost or out of bounds?
Okay, so another thing we don't like to encounter during a round of golf is what happens when we hit our ball out of bounds or it becomes lost during play. And this video will also talk about not only that, but the playing of provisional balls.
If you hit your ball out of bounds or lose it,
it's going right.
The rules require you to play another one from where you last played under the penalty of stroke and distance. Stroke and distance is your only option for a ball that winds up out of bounds or is lost unless an optional local rule provides an alternative. If you have any uncertainty about your ball being lost or out of bounds, consider playing a provisional ball from your original spot.
I think I'm gonna hit a provisional ball.
Because looking for a ball only to have to return to the previous spot can disrupt the pace of play. If your previous stroke was made from the tee, simply tee it up again. If you last played from the fairway, the rough, a bunker, or penalty area, drop a ball within 1 club length of the spot where your last stroke was made, making sure not to move closer to the hole. If you happen to find your ball inbounds within the 3-minute search time, great.
Hey, I found my ball. Can someone pick up my provisional ball, please?
But if you can't find your ball or it indeed winds up out of bounds, just play on with the provisional. But remember, you're not allowed to play a provisional when the only place your original ball could be lost is in a penalty area. When this happens, you must instead use one of the options under penalty area relief.
Okay, so first of all, let's talk about when our ball becomes lost. During a ball search, we have 3 minutes to find our ball, and that clock starts when the player or the player's caddy has begun searching for the ball. If 3 minutes has elapsed, then the ball has not been found, then the ball would deem to be lost at that point. So if you find your ball at 3 minutes and 30 seconds, the ball is lost, even though you physically found it. It was outside of that 3-minute window. When is a ball out of bounds? A ball is out of bounds when all of it lies out of bounds. And so these are two great pictures here. The one on the left is when out of bounds is being defined by white stakes. The out of bounds line is at the ground level of the course side of those stakes. So you can see the two balls on the left are both not touching a part of the course, and the two balls on the right are touching a part of the course. They would be inbounds. On the right picture, that out of bounds is being defined by a white line on the ground. That line itself is out of bounds, and so the left two balls, neither is touching a part of the course, so they're out of bounds, and the right two balls are inbounds because a part of the ball is touching a part of the course. You can stand out of bounds to play a ball that is inbounds. As the video indicated, if our ball becomes lost or out of bounds, our only option is to play stroke and distance by adding one penalty stroke and playing a ball from where our previous stroke was made. If that was in the teeing area here, we can tee the ball up anywhere within the teeing area. If that was in the general area, bunker, or a penalty area, we're going to drop the ball within 1 club length of where our last stroke was made in those areas. If we happen to lose or hit our ball out of bounds from the putting green, I've never seen it happen, but I suppose it's possible. If that's the case, then you will place a ball at the where the stroke was made from the putting green. Some of you may be aware of a local rule that exists that allows you to drop a ball where you think it may have become lost or crossed the out of bounds boundary. That is a local rule that has to be in place to give you that option. By and large, that rule is not meant for competitive play, but rather everyday recreational play at clubs to keep the pace of play moving. We do not have that local rule in place at any GSGA competitions. So your only option is to proceed under stroke and distance. But once again, please be mindful of what rules are in place in the events that you're playing in. Let's talk a little bit about playing provisional balls. And this is something that is important and helps keep the pace of play moving. I'm allowed to play a provisional ball if my ball might be lost outside of a penalty area or be out of bounds. Notice if I think my ball may be lost inside a penalty area, there is no option to play a provisional ball in that instance. When I decide I'm going to play a provisional ball, there is a process I need to go through. I need to announce to my playing group that I am playing a provisional ball. It's not enough for me to say I'm going to play another ball or I'm going to reload or I'm going to play again. I need to use the word provisional or somehow indicate I'm playing under rule 18.3, which is the provisional ball rule. So just make sure you say you're playing a ball provisionally if you intend to do so. If I don't announce this and use the word provisional, then essentially what I'm doing is putting another ball into play under stroke and distance, and I'll just have to play that ball under that 1 stroke penalty because that is now my ball in play. When does my provisional ball become the ball in play? When I discover that my original ball is lost, so I've searched for it for 3 minutes, I can't find it. At that point, my provisional ball will become the ball in play. Or if I discover my ball is out of bounds when I go up to search for it, then my provisional becomes the ball in play. Or I can play my provisional all the way up until the point where I think my original ball may be. Once I play it closer to the hole, then that point, then now my provisional ball is in play, and the original ball is out of play or deemed to be lost at that point. Any questions on lost ball, out of bounds, or playing provisional ball?
All right, moving on to an unplayable ball. Another thing that unfortunately happens from time to time. And we'll start off with another video.
If you are in a spot where you can't or don't want to play your ball as it lies, consider taking relief. Unplayable ball relief can be taken anywhere on the course except when your ball is in a penalty area, where the penalty area rule applies. If you decide to take relief, you have 3 options, but all come with 1 penalty stroke. The first option is stroke and distance, which means you can go back to the spot where you last played. The second is to imagine a straight line from the hole through the location of your ball and drop on that line behind it. Your ball can roll up to 1 club length in any direction from where it first struck the course, including forward. The third is to drop anywhere within 2 club lengths of your ball, no closer to the hole. In a bunker, you have the same 3 relief options, all for 1 penalty stroke. The only exception is you must stay inside the bunker if using either the 2 club length or back on the line option. There is, however, a 4th option that only applies when you decide your ball is unplayable in a bunker. It allows you to get out of the bunker by going back on the line as far as you'd like and comes with 2 penalty strokes.
Okay, so unplayable ball, again, relief for this is allowed anywhere on the golf course except the penalty area. If you want to take unplayable on the putting green, under this, you are allowed to do so. If your ball is in a penalty area and it is unplayable, the reason that you cannot take this rule is because we already have that covered in Rule 17, which is penalty area, and we've already discussed that. Now, if you are taking penalty relief or unplayable relief for an unplayable, we're going back to our ABCs from penalty area relief. It's very similar, and again, in each case, it is a 1 penalty stroke. For this first option, our A, again, stroke and distance option. This is allowed even if the ball is not found or identified. That goes into the ball being lost, which Jeremy just talked about. For the other 2 options that you have, we must know the spot of the original ball. We must identify it because that is what we're going to be using as our reference point. And so just to recap these ABCs, our stroke and distance is our A option, or again, to go back to where we previously played from and drop within the relief area there. That second option, our B option, back on the line, is going to be measured from the original spot, from the spot of the ball and that imaginary line from the flagstick. As far back as you would like to go. And there's our full circle relief area, because you'll choose a spot on that line. And then if it rolls forward within a club length, that's okay. And again, just recapping, that can go anywhere within that 1 club length. And so to finish up with unplayable in the general area or anywhere else before we move on to the bunkers is our C option, our club length. And again, our reference point is going to be the spot of the original ball. And we measure one club length no closer to the hole and drop it within there. In this situation, and I guess all situations with unplayable, just be certain that you want to choose that option, because if you drop a ball and it becomes unplayable again, we're not, and it's in the relief area, we're not going to be able to drop it a second time to get out. We're going to have to take another unplayable penalty for that. So just be careful when you choose any of those three options. Now, moving on to unplayable in a bunker, there is one additional option, but there's also just a couple more quirks to this situation. So again, our unplayable stroke and distance, it's one penalty stroke outside of the bunker, and that's where we previously played from. For back on the line and our club length option, for one penalty stroke, the ball needs to remain in the bunker. So back on the line, you are restricted as far back as you can go, and that would be the back edge. For club length, as you can see in this shaded area, it's not that full semicircle that you would normally see because a little bit of that area would be outside of the bunker and the player is not able to drop there. Now for our additional option in this situation, if you would like to go outside of the bunker back on the line, it would be 2 penalty strokes, but you would at least get outside of the bunker. So if your shot in was from, let's say, 230 yards, and it was a very difficult shot, and you also don't like playing from the bunkers or you don't have a good lie, you may want to take this option and drop outside of the bunker, maybe 5 or 10 yards behind, and have your chip shot or whatever shot from there. But again, this option, if you choose to do so, is a penalty of 2 strokes. Any questions about unplayable ball, unplayable in a bunker, and that additional option?
Okay, the last part of our presentation is going to talk about how do we proceed when we don't know how to proceed under the rules, essentially, or we can't find a rules official on the course. And that, I think, happens occasionally during competitive play. So the rules have accounted for that, and they are going to allow us to play 2 balls without penalty when I'm uncertain about how to proceed in a certain situation. So you can see here, she has found an area of turf that she believes may be ground under repair. She's announcing I'm going to play 2 balls because she would like relief from that area if it is determined to be ground under repair. And the process that you need to undergo in this situation is after the uncertain situation arises, but before I make a stroke at that ball, I need to inform my marker or another player that I'm going to play 2 balls, and I need to determine and say which ball I would like to count if the rules allow the procedure for that ball. So more times than not, it's going to be the ball that you take the relief with, because that's the reason we're in this situation. And I need to do all that before I make a stroke with either ball. If I do not choose or say what ball I would like to count, the ball I play first is going to be the ball chosen by default. And perhaps the most important thing that I do is I report this to the committee as soon as possible, but no later than returning my scorecard in the scoring area, even if I scored the same with both balls. So the committee needs to make a ruling and tell you which ball is going to count and make sure that you proceeded correctly under the rules. If I fail to report to the committee, then I'm going to be disqualified from the competition. If I make a stroke and then I decide I'm going to play a second ball, unfortunately, I'm not able to do so at that point. However, I'm not going to be penalized for playing the second ball. The score with my original ball will be the score that counts in that scenario. Once again, you have to do this before you take any action. This concludes our presentation. Does anybody have any questions on playing two balls in uncertain situations, or any other questions at all about what we have presented here this evening? Okay, if not, we're going to wrap up the presentation at this time and allow you to enjoy the rest of your evening. We hope that everybody had a good time. Oh, we've got a question that just came in. Can a smartwatch be used for a distance check? And the answer to that is any device that allows you to measure distance is acceptable. It just cannot be able to measure slope, wind, gradient, any of those items that we discussed previously that are prohibited. So there are GPS watches, there are applications on mobile devices that allow you to look at distance information, and all that would be acceptable. You just cannot use it to access any of that prohibited information. So hopefully that helps answer your question. Anything else before we shut it down for the evening? Okay, I want to thank you again for joining us here, and hopefully you learned a little something and can take it out on the golf course. We wish you a lot of luck and much success with your junior events coming up. And we hope to see everybody out at GSGA Junior Tour events very soon. Have a good evening.